Hello and welcome back to the podcast. It's so good to be here with you today. I'm Jenna Layden, your host. And today we're going to be talking about a couple of big things. I'm going to be sharing about an experience that happened a year ago. This is the 1 year anniversary of that experience. It was a type of Mother Divine Darshan. I met Ma Kali, and we'll be talking about what that was like and how that relates to the work I've been doing over the last year. And this episode is episode 19 of the Supernatural Souls podcast. I recently announced the death of the Star Family Wisdom podcast at the beginning of March. Around the time of Shivaratri, I was doing just a lot of work around the theme of death and really tuning in to where aspects of my journey, aspects of my work, aspects of what I had been doing with the podcast, where that was feeling complete, and also recognizing how in the creation process it's really good for us to come to closure, to find completion in aspects of life, to then allow new life to be born through us. So I'm highly aware, of that cyclic process that we go through, and how, we need to be tending, energetically to all aspects of that cycle. And while I'm excited to continue contributing and sharing and serving in various ways in the future, it's important to allow the next new things to come through. It's important to allow the higher octave of your creative ability, the universe's creative ability, to move through you. And that usually can happen better when we come to completion with what we've already been focused on or doing or in relationship or whatever it is. So the Star Family Wisdom podcast ended recently. That podcast was born of my journey of saying yes to massive transformation and going really deep in my exploration of various spiritual lineages on the planet, becoming a master shamanic energy medicine practitioner, moving people through initiation processes and ceremony, and learning how to work with the moon cycle and all of these things. And ultimately, the goal has been to excavate all aspects of limiting beliefs, all aspects of the patriarchal systems on this planet that lived within me, that were very strong within me, and recognizing what those were, and how those belief systems, those energies, those ways of operating were actually out of alignment with what's possible for life and the way the universe wants to operate with us. So the journey of the Star Family Wisdom podcast and all the work I've done with Star Family Wisdom over the last almost 3 years now really has been about transformation and sharing along the way, but using my journey as an example, sharing things I'm doing, sharing things I'm finding and learning and integrating for the purpose of helping others, and ultimately getting to a place of having transcended karma, having transcended limiting beliefs and limitation, coming back into a state of boundlessness and really beautiful creative flow. So that has been the journey. And then this podcast started as a result of me reconnecting with the Sai lineage, the divine lineage of Sri Kaleshwar, Shirdi Sai Baba, Jesus Christ. My soul recognized the lineage immediately. My soul recognized the practices and the processes within this lineage rather immediately. And I've moved fast. I've moved really fast with a lot of the processes. And while I'm excited to continue contributing and sharing and serving in the future, it's also, I think, just so important to recognize where we are complete with something, to allow the next thing to come through. So I had done that with the Star Family Wisdom podcast, hadn't quite felt complete with this one, wasn't quite sure where this one wanted to go, was starting to feel a little complete with student interviews. We started this podcast partially with the intention to interview people from this lineage and share some wisdom and stories and information about their journeys that might be helpful. And we've got a great body of information there from those interviews. And I've been tuning into where I, experiencing passion and fun, and it's so important to tune into that. It's so important to tune into our creative flow and what wants to move through us. And again, not staying stuck or not staying, doing something we started just because we started it, right? It's really good to allow for evolution and transformation. So that's what's happening. So we're going to end the Supernatural Souls podcast at episode 19, which is interesting because we ended the Star Family Wisdom podcast at episode 91. So we have a reversal there, a palindrome situation, which I find interesting. And the numerology of those numbers is interesting for anyone who might want to check that out. But we'll talk today about my exploration of the Psi lineage, and we'll talk about a major experience that happened last year, a year ago. This is 1 year anniversary of me meeting Ma Kali, having a major Mother Divine type of darshan experience. And then, kind of what that has led to, like what that kicked off in terms of process work and why it feels complete now. So from the title, you are probably also wondering about bleeding in temples. So maybe we'll cover that first, and then we'll talk about Ma Kali. I think Ma's a little upset about patriarchy on Earth and the rise of patriarchy. And now, again, this is a conversation that is meant to help us come back into balance. And so, again, both energies, masculine, feminine, are so important. And in marriage and union, in perfect balance and perfect harmony, we can do amazing things. When we've got imbalance, things get out of order and we start to experience what we've experienced on Earth. So we are coming out of an era of extreme imbalance. We are coming out of an era of extreme, focus on the masculine. And in that era, we lost a lot, an extraordinary amount of wisdom, practices, ways of operating that are feminine in nature, that help us understand the feminine nature of the universe. And luckily, not all of that was lost. A lot of it does still exist, but we're putting the pieces of the puzzle back together now. We are excavating, all of the spiritual lineages all over the world. We're excavating all of the ancient texts and finding where the era of patriarchy covered up these really, really, really important aspects of who we are and how life is meant to flow. So last year, I went to India for the first time after I found the Psi lineage and did have this extraordinary moment of recognition. I am a person who has accessed a lot of past life memories. I'm a person who is not just accessing past life memories, but now working at the archetypal galactic level and, moving my consciousness out, zooming out. So I'm a person that has been integrating a lot of spontaneous past life recall, spontaneous memories, that sort of stuff. And that happened when I found the Psi lineage. So I went to India very quickly because I knew I needed to go. I knew there was a reason for my soul to go reconnect with the land, with the temples, with the ashram that Sri Kaleshwar built. And so I went to India, and there is a fairly general rule in a lot of the lineages in India, and this also, I think, has been present in other spiritual lineages too, that when a woman is bleeding, when she's on her menses, when she's on her period, whatever you want to call it, that she shouldn't go into temple because she's like kind of unclean. The blood that is coming out of her is unclean. Well, while yes, there are energetic releasing processes, occurring with that part of a woman's cycle, men are also going through cycles of release and receiving energy too. Men are not told when they can go in or out of temples. Okay. So I get to India, and I'm mindful of this rule and wanting to be respectful, but also I didn't anticipate bleeding while I was there. And I'm wanting to go in various temples, and I just had this moment. I start bleeding, and I have this moment of, really? Like, really? Like, come on. Like, number one, that feels like a rule that got established during the Kali Yuga, which was the era of patriarchy. It feels, again, like it's not quite in alignment with what is true, since both men and women release energy. And three, I've got important work to do, and I'm here for a limited period of time, and I'm going to get my work done. And so I went through this process of, no man is going to write a rule about my body and tell me that any part of my body is unholy, or that any part of my cycle is dirty or unclean. Every part of my body is holy and divine. And while I might from time to time choose to stay in isolation during a part of my cycle while I'm bleeding, for that purpose of release and reflection and that sort of thing, I rose up, and it was like Kali coming through me. This was like an internal process I'm having. This isn't with another person. But I was like, you know what? No, no, like, come on, like, let's put that one to bed. So I decided I would go into the temples and just ignore that rule, because that is a dogma and a rule that does not apply to me and my divinity. So number one, that's what happened around that. So I share that publicly because I think this is another example of ways in which we stay limited. This is another example of ways in which systems of control have crept into spirituality. No man can tell a woman what to do with her body. So I had this experience of starting to kind of, embody and feel this fierce, kind of pissed off energy, about spirituality in the way it has, been perpetuated on earth. So I ignored that rule, and I did my work, and I progressed in that work beautifully. When I got home, this was maybe a couple of weeks after getting home from that trip, and I had visited, Shiva temple, and done a lot of work, and was moving fast through various processes, was remembering a lot, and again, had already reached certain levels of mastery with other lineages, with the shamanic practice I was engaging. So I had a strong foundation, before I found the Sai lineage, which allowed me to really take off when the time came. So I'm home from India and integrating all of the sadhana and process work I've been doing, and I also had this moment. I should share this. This is an interesting reflection on the abundance of the goddess and the abundance of the divine feminine, and the ways in which we have found ourselves stuck in limitation and stuck in lack and stuck in scarcity and stuck in all of these situations that are really not about us experiencing a good life and experiencing a pleasurable life. And so in a lot of our spirituality and a lot of our spiritual lineages on earth, we still buy into ideas about being like really ascetic, or being, really like limiting in our experience of the world, going through austerities and all that stuff, right? Worse, flagellating, and all sorts of kind of violent sorts of painful practices, even in certain lineages. So our spirituality has leaned really into the less pleasurable side of things. So I'm journeying to India. It's a really long trip, for anyone who's been, it's a long trip. And I had been making good money at Whole Foods, and had, money to work with as I've been doing this spiritual journey. Ma took a lot of that at one point. I got hit with a little lesson and some negativity at one point. All good, but I had been working through my abundance journey and my sense of security and stability, and that sense of what is okay, for me to lean into in terms of abundance and pleasure and spending money and wanting to receive more money and all of that, right? Like that's a journey we go on in our spiritual lives and our transformation process. We're learning and reinforming, our bodies and our cells. Like we need to, at a cellular level, know the abundance and blessings that are available to us. We need to have reprogrammed ourselves from that state of limitation that we've been in the era of patriarchy, which has very, very much programmed us like computers, right? We are programmable like computers. We have been programmed to think and believe and in our bodies not feel okay with certain levels of beauty and abundance and wealth and all that stuff. So I'm going to India, and at first I book a regular economy ticket, trying to, be prudent and responsible and all those things, and not spend too much money. And I'm also going for the purpose of, doing these like austerity practices and spiritual practices. And maybe I should be a little austere with, my travel and that sort of thing. So, and for the record, I always have been. I've not been a person that's like flying first class around the world, but I will indulge in certain experiences, because I think that I've always had that in me, that I think that's important. Like, rather than, if I had to choose between buying a bunch of new clothes and staying at a 5-star hotel for a couple of nights, I'm going to choose the 5-star hotel for that experience. And so I've always, like walked that line and found that balance, and with the idea of leaning, more and more into what I would like to experience, right? Rather than what I've been taught I am supposed to experience. So I'm, I'm headed to India, and I'm in this place of like processing all that stuff around abundance and scarcity and austerity versus pleasure. And I have another one of these like Kali moments, where like I'm investing so much of my time and energy and, mental power and studying and integrating all these new practices and processes, and And why should I be stuck in the economy seats for like a 24-hour trip and just get to India completely exhausted and, have to recover for days, all that, right? So that was going through my head of, well, but not everyone gets to do, business class. So maybe I should do that and just suck it up and do it. And I had this moment of like, heck no, that is inhumane. Like, quite frankly, that is how I believe, that's how I feel these days. Quite frankly, I see a lot of what we put up with as humans as just inhumane. Like what we've chosen, about how air travel should be, it's kind of gross. Like it's kind of inhumane in a lot of ways, like for that long distance travel. So I was like going through this process of, no, I'm going to choose what is healthy for me. I'm going to choose abundance. I'm going to choose what I know is possible. And I'm going to let the universe support me in that. And so again, that's its own whole process to work through. And and I just share that because this was another moment of really leaning into the mother's abundance and really leaning into this idea of, I don't need to torture myself. I don't need to go through all this struggle. I don't need to be so austere because I'm afraid that God isn't going to bless me and that I'm not going to progress in my processes because I'm, having too much pleasure. Like we've got a lot of stuff mixed up in our heads about how this is supposed to work. So for this last year, I've been working on this idea of balance, total balance, right? That we never want to move into like gluttony, right? But we want balance and we want pleasure and we want abundance and we also want discipline and we want the ability to accept what life brings us. And there's this incredible balancing act, right? That we work through on this journey. So I had those, couple of moments of just in my own life, starting to, in a more powerful way, internally embody my divine feminine power and like own it, and be okay with it. And so I get home from India, and a couple weeks later, I'm having a process day where I'm doing a lot of meditation, and I'm starting to move into, what was a kind of supernatural state of consciousness. For anyone who's had supernatural types of experiences, mystical types of experiences, that feeling, when physical reality starts to just feel different. You're stepping outside of time, you're stepping outside of space a little bit, and you're perceiving more all of a sudden. And so over the years, that has been progressing for me in various ways. And this one day after the India trip, I'm sitting in front of my altar in the living room, and I'm in this process of reflecting on like how the creation works, how the mechanics of existence work, how what I was kind of piecing back together in my consciousness about how the whole functions. And I was starting to talk to Mother, and I was just in this place. It was a one-way conversation at first. While I've had other sorts of telepathic, download types of, receiving messages and that sort of thing, I hadn't really had an experience yet that I could really like pinpoint or feel very sure like this was like a direct communion, with God kind of moment. So I'm starting to talk to Mother, and I'm at my altar, and just right below my altar is like a bookshelf with some glass doors that are reflective, so I can see myself in them. And I'm sitting there kind of looking up at the altar. I'm talking to Ma, and if I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at Ma. So I'm talking to Ma, and I'm just saying things like, I know how your creation works, like I've experienced a lot of it, and I'm reflecting on that, and I'm sensing, that I'm kind of coming to a greater understanding, and I know a lot about your creation, I know a lot about how you operate, I know a lot about you, but I want to really know you now. Like, I want to meet you, I want to know you. And for anyone who's familiar with the Sai lineage, for those who aren't, one thing that is common, that was taught or was common when Sri Kaleshwar was alive, that he taught, was how to have a Mother Divine Darshan experience. And Swami Sri Kaleshwar was able to pull a very physical representation of Mother Divine for people. So people could have an actual physical meeting experience. So breaking, the matrix of space and time, and pulling into physical creation her hologram to interact with people. So that's something that had been common. There are many ways the universe talks to us. There are many ways the universe, is in communion with us. And so there's all types of, darshan experiences, I think, that we can have. And and one thing I had been practicing a lot up until this point was a certain type of shamanic journeying meditation, where you learn how to journey and navigate your way to the lower world, and you learn how to journey and navigate your way to the upper world. So I'd been doing a ton of these over the years to develop my ability to navigate my inner world, to navigate the chambers of my soul, to find past life wounds, current life wounds, limiting beliefs, negative programming, soul contracts, and to work on changing those if they needed to be changed to a more appropriate, healthy, empowered place. And then journeying to the upper world to tune into destiny and commune with that aspect of Father that guards the upper world, that receives spirits back to the upper world, that can help us track into the future and bring a more heavenly experience of reality to earth. So I've been doing a lot of this work for a while, and was very familiar with these tracks, these journeys I would take, and my psychic abilities, were developing in ways where I perceive quite a bit in these journeys. And so this day I'm talking to Mom, and I'm talking to her, and I'm saying, I want to meet you, and then I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden she starts talking back, and it was undeniable. It was so cool. It was so wild. And she said, I'll show you by changing your face. And I just immediately knew what she meant. I was looking at myself in the glass right below the altar. So I start looking at myself, just very still, very quiet. And I'm looking at myself. And all of a sudden my face does change. First, it changed to this very haggard, kind of very ugly, almost burned, but it wasn't that, but just kind of very awful, looking face. But it was my face, but it was changing. And then it changed to this old crone, very older, woman face, and a grandmotherly, kind of face, lots of wrinkles, and I'm just watching this in awe, and I'm not flinching. I'm just in awe of what's happening. And I hear, "You're not scared." And I immediately reply, "No, I know that's you. I know that you're also ugly and fierce and old and, all of it. I know it's all you." And then she said, "Okay, come up." And I immediately knew what that meant. So I'm already in this kind of supernatural state of consciousness, right? And all of a sudden she's telling me to come up, and I know to go to the upper world. I know to journey to the upper world. but I'm not quite sure what's going to happen after that. You know, like I've only gotten so far in those journeys. And so I start going through the procedure of taking myself up and in this meditative state, journeying. This is not like soul travel. It's not like I left my body per se. This is more of like a remote viewing, kind of exercise. I journey up. And when you get to the upper world, you meet with the keeper of the upper world. That is the aspect of Father that guards the upper world, guards entrance, guards our ability to access, certain parts of consciousness there. And I get up there and I'm like, Father, like Pachacuti is what we call him in the shamanic traditions. That's what I call him. I said, Pachacuti, I'm here to see Mother. How do I get there? I don't know where to go. How do I get there? And so he points the way. So he then unlocked the way to get to her. And so I went. So I kept journeying and I kind of like visualize this now as like, if you think of yourself here on Earth, and then the center of the universe is over here, right? Like we have this big round universe and the center of the universe is over here. You're tunneling your way through reality all the way to the center of the universe to, Mother's abode of light, that I like to call it. So I get there, and the final part of the journey was like climbing up this ladder that took me to like what in the journey I was perceiving as like the top of space where there was a door. So it's like I was reaching the edge, of the known universe in a way. So this is very much like this process that I went through is like stepping out of the universe to meet Ma or Father. So I get up this ladder to this door and I knock. I'm like, Ma, I'm here. Can I come in? And I have no idea, like what's on the other side of this door. So I open the door and I go in, and it's this black box, just a black box, like a cube that I'm in all of a sudden. The black box at Mecca just came into my mind. I don't know why. We'll revisit that sometime in the future. So I'm in this black box and nothing's there. It's just all black. And I'm like, okay, I'm just standing in this black room. And then boom, all of a sudden she's there, and she is big and hairy and like this scary monster lady. Like, it was almost like you couldn't even discern a gender or anything, like it was just this gigantic monster figure. And she was kind of at the back of the room. And as fast as she came in, then all of a sudden she started flipping into all these different forms. And I can't even remember some of them. It happened so fast. It was just like boom, 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 one after another. One of them I remember was this like kind of creepy, scary galactic woman, like on a starship. And the last one, the final figure that she transformed into was a serpent, was a snake. And so it was like all these figures, and then boom, on the floor, the snake. And then we talked, and we got to have a conversation, and I received her PIN code, and then it was a fairly quick conversation. And then as soon as it was done, poof, she was gone. Black box again, just all black. And then I came back down. And so after that happened, I knew, number one, to start charging the mantra, to start working with that mantra. And two, I recognized that also because of where I had been in my transformation process, my work on finding the mental programming, limiting beliefs, all that stuff, that we've got to excavate and deprogram and then reprogram. Because of where I was at in that journey, although I was making incredible progress, there was still a lot to do. And so it's been a very busy, intense last year doing that work. But I recognized after a while that, I shouldn't try to find her again unless I get called, unless it's very obvious, like what happened that day where it was just so obvious. Like I just knew, like, trying, to make another experience happen or find her again, I would hit a wall because the timing wouldn't be right, the energy wouldn't be right. So I just continued with all my other process work, but I recognized that this was now kicking off a period of what I've referred to as making myself beautiful. Okay, so like Kali represents the ugliness and the fierceness, and and she comes through when we're not in our most harmonious, beautiful, abundant, feminine state, right? Like when we have a lot of negativity still in us, and a lot of that programming that is disharmonious, that's when Kali is going to come through. So Kali came through when I still was in, a somewhat disharmonious state, and had work to do to move back into a state of beauty and harmony and flow and all of that. So that kicked off what has been a year-long process now of finding my way back to Mother's beautiful aspects, and integrating, blending and learning how to work with the Kali energy in new ways. Some of the experiences that have happened over this last year, were very Kali in nature, and learning how to hold those energies and work with them in healthy ways is really important, on our journey. But, I've been reflecting too on this year-long process that's now, coming to a close. I've been reflecting on all of the ways that the era of patriarchy is still living in our spiritual lineages. And, I think in some ways, even the Psi lineage, there's still some patriarchy living in that lineage. There, I think, is, there's a difference between, learning about the Divine Mother and learning about the divine feminine power of the universe versus truly embodying it and allowing, like all of Mother's aspects to live in us, to inform, our experience of reality. And I also learned that I think this is maybe important to share for people finding this channel who are interested in this lineage. While the Mother Divine Darshans that Swami Sri Kaleshwar helped facilitate, while those can be incredibly enlightening moments, having one darshan experience does not now make you an enlightened being. So while I had a very significant darshan experience 1 year ago, and then another very significant one that then had physicality to it a few months, maybe about 4 or 5 months later, one of those experiences does not now, boom, all of a sudden make you, the penultimate enlightened being. Like you're still on a journey, you're still learning about how to embody these different aspects of Mother, and again, learning about how the goddess really is, like how the feminine really is in this universe, and learning, really revering, that power in our human lives. I think there's this I've been thinking of it as like this call to action, as I've been thinking about the ways patriarchy sneaks into our spiritual lineages, even ones that do a lot of work around the feminine and divine mother. I think maybe the call to action, maybe this is a fun way to put it. The call to action is like a scavenger hunt to find all of the ways patriarchy is still living, the era of patriarchy is still living in our spiritual lineages. So that's a fun call to action for you as part of your journey of enlightenment, as part of your journey of embodying all of Mother's aspects, learning about all of Mother's aspects, and learning how to work with them in a human body. And you know, I think there's just this just incredible level of physical integration that must occur on these journeys that also teaches us about the feminine and about feminine power and you know, some of the things I was leaning into over this last year. You know, if I had told anyone something that was occurring, you know, as I was kind of beginning my work in the Psi lineage and doing these enlightenment processes, if I had told someone about this kind of experience I was having with my sexuality and embodying this particular archetype of the mother, in that, I don't know how, you know, I don't know how people would have reacted to that, you know, because I was even perceiving this time last year that, you know, there were aspects of life that we kind of suppress a little bit, right, to become fully enlightened. And I have a very different opinion now. You know, I think this journey is so much more about integration. It's so much more about really leaning into pleasure and bliss and joy and I was thinking about this in relation to, you know, our experience of sexuality, our experience of that sort of power, you know, through the power channels, you know, different tantric systems within the Psi lineage, and through your own work of transmutation and excavating all those negative programs and transforming them into positive programs, or ones that are in alignment with the truth of our reality. You know, doing that work plus the power channels, you can reach these like really extraordinary levels of bliss. I've had that experience now for a number of months, you know, going back and forth a little bit between states of separation and states of unity. But when you truly are in a state of unity consciousness, wow, like the bliss you feel is incredible. And that bliss can also be achieved in other ways. You know, we can lean into, you know, pleasure in our lives to experience bliss. We can lean into, you know, exploring our sexuality in healthy ways to, you know, experience bliss. And so again, this is, you know, a call to action to start that scavenger hunt yourself. And this is, again, not about judgment. This is just about excavating and finding, you know, where is it still living in us? Where's dogma and rules and you know, these more like limiting, even suppressive, you know, ways of engaging the universe. Like, where's that still living in us? You know, where do I not feel fully empowered to just be who I am and love it and embody all of it? You know, where am I feeling shame or guilt? Or where am I feeling like I can't be abundant? Where am I feeling like I'm not worthy of certain things, right? Like, this world, the era of patriarchy in this world has caused some major damage to our belief systems, our psyche, our souls. And Ma is pissed about that. Ma would like that corrected. So, over this last year, that's been my mission, to correct that in myself, and to to continue progressing and learning, from all of my teachers in the ways that I can, integrating all of that in the ways that I can, while also leaning into what is fun and what lights me up, and the ways that abundance, can flow in life, and the ways we can make life beautiful. And there's so much inner work that we've got to do, so much transmutation work that we've got to do on that journey to to go from meeting Ma Kali to meeting her other aspects. And so over this last year, I've continued to have various types of darshan experiences. I have met Divine Father, and I have seen Ma and Father together multiple times, which is symbolic of divine union within me strengthening. So anytime, we're having a type of darshan experience, or a very direct, physical darshan experience, that is a reflection of us. This is a holographic reality. We live in a hologram. We live in a reality, a universe that gives us an experience of physicality, but that experience of physicality is just a projection of light. And that projection of light is giving us a physical reflection of our consciousness. So the journey of enlightenment or empowerment, in my opinion, is about knowing ourselves deeply. To know God is to know yourself in the most intimate ways possible. To know God is to have met like all of the aspects of God, positive and negative, that have lived within you, and to then return to harmony. We can then have a very different experience of reality when we've balanced all those aspects. And so again, in the future, in a different format, I'll share more about these experiences, if that feels relevant and helpful for others. But these, experiences really did show me the very real reflective quality of the universe, of God, of Source, and our higher self consciousness, and and how we can continue to receive those reflections through some of these processes that have been delivered by the Psi lineage. We can receive the reflection of how we're progressing on that journey from disorder to divine order, from disharmony to harmony, from ugliness to beauty. We have the ability to work directly with the Mother Father consciousness of this universe to reflect back to us where we're at on our journey of becoming like the Mother, becoming like the Father, and allowing their full consciousness to live through us. So I think, maybe in the future it might feel fun to guide people in some of these meditative processes, because these are not ones that are taught in the Psi lineage. I combined multiple lineages to navigate these experiences. And so for those who maybe have interest in that, or are on that specific journey of having those sorts of kind of direct communion types of experiences, I'd love to support that. And I'm also excited about, burning down the patriarchy, figuratively and literally where it makes sense in healthy ways. Part of our work of embodying, all aspects of mother and father is also learning about the destructive aspects and how the destructive aspects operate, in reality and through us. So I say that in a joking way. But sometimes things do figuratively need to burn down. Sometimes we need to start over. Sometimes we need to reimagine how things are working, and that can happen a lot of ways. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about, the momentum that is already, there and picking up speed in this world, related to understanding the feminine, related to revering the feminine, related to really honoring like the portal of life that is a woman, and honoring her as a representation of the goddess, of the Divine Mother. And it's so cool to see all of the ways in which that momentum is occurring, and we've got a long ways to go, but we've got some momentum occurring, which is really cool. And so I think for anyone who is really serious about their spiritual path, and becoming a very dedicated practitioner, and all of that, and especially for anyone who is in the Psi lineage or exploring the processes in the Psi lineage, again, my call to action, Mother's call to action, I think, is let's continue to find all of the ways the era of patriarchy has lived in our spirituality, and let's actually work to embody the goddess now. Let's actually work to understand her at the deepest level, and to, in our physical world, in our lives, in our relationships, reestablish that harmony. So this is again about self-examination, and like recognizing all of the ways we've been programmed by the era of patriarchy, and excavating and digging that out of us, and reprogramming ourselves. And that is hard work. That is not easy, but it is worth it. And that is Mother's call to action for us. So with that, I think we'll wrap up, and we'll call this exploration of the Psi lineage, of the Supernatural Souls podcast rather complete. Life continues, the journey continues, integration always continues. Creation, is a really fun thing to engage. It's fun to create. It's fun to play in Ma's playground. So I hope this also demonstrates willingness to see a cycle, through to completion, to highlight aspects of my experience that kind of butt up against some of what is taught in various lineages, and to hopefully empower you in greater ways, and to help you find your way back to the goddess. So with that, I'll see you again in the future at some point. This is just bye for now, but we'll call this podcast good for now. And I'll see you again at some point. Take care. I love you all.